Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the third episode in a series where I spend 200 hours developing a game in Godot, showing myself and everybody else what could be achieved if you spend a somewhat considerable amount of time developing a game. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So first things first, just so everybody knows that I'm not lying, which would obviously be quite strange. I am using a tool called Wakatime to track all of my time in Godot. Wakatime is something where you can install the plugin into whatever IDE you use. It will then track the time spent on the project, on whatever file. It can kind of give you some interesting insights. So as we can see here, my top languages in the past were Rust, Go, and GD script, which is a little bit right. You can add some goals of time spent, and then if we go here, we see this is what I've been doing in Godot. And so you can see probably where I've had the most trouble and what I've been working on the most. So one big change in the past 10 hours that I made was I've actually made a concerted effort to try and coordinate the tasks a little bit. So I'm using Notion here, and Notion is just quite a cool little note-taking app, page app. It's pretty extensive. You guys can look at it. The link will be in the description. And what I've done is I've just made a quite a simple Kanban board. So if you don't know what a Kanban board is, it's essentially just a way of organizing tasks and the status of those tasks. So I've got a backlog, a to-do list, in progress and done. And so here, I'm just kind of putting down what tasks I want to achieve, because as I'm breaking this challenge down into 10-minute chunks, 10-hour chunks, sorry, I'm essentially doing 10-hour sprints. So at the end of one video, I kind of look at the next 10 hours and I say, okay, I want to try and achieve this within that 10 hours. And then, so this was how it started at the beginning of the 10 hours. And then this is how it ended. The good thing about this is everything's trackable. So here I've made different pages, and we can add some descriptions, add some designs, add some things. And all the tasks that we've done, we also have a collection of that. Cool, so now we're actually into Godot itself. And the first and most important thing that I have to say that I've done is I have changed the theme of Godot. I think we all know and accept that changing the theme of the ID that you're using is the most important thing. But other than that, on the actual map itself, I just started working a little bit more on a farm. I'll show you guys this in a second. And to be honest, that's mainly it for the map. But what I have spent quite a lot of time on is we now have a pause menu. Oh, okay, it sounds like the music pauses as well. Well, the pause menu truly is very effective. I've added some buttons. Some of these work, some of these don't, but at least resume works. Main menu does work as well. We go back. It's quite a nice little touch. I think adding these little things really improve the overall polish. The observant of you guys will notice that we also have a very basic heads-up display where we have no money and we have 100 health, which is actually somewhat linked to the character. And then the next thing that we have done is we've added an inventory. So I followed a tutorial on YouTube. I think it was by Game Maker. Apologies if that's incorrect, but I'll leave a link down in the description to the tutorial for this. But I followed that for the most part and added in a few items that you can now walk into and collect, and it fills up the inventory. And I added a few little buttons that don't work with the styling very well, but I was a little bit lazy. But nice. We got like a very basic inventory system. Expanded on the farm a little bit. We've got some sheep in various different animations. We've got a chicken pen. Chicken's coming soon, by the way. And that's going to be the inventory. Awesome. So at the end of the last episode, when I made the world's worst minigame, I was kind of preluding to the fact that the minigame was terrible, but I could use some elements of that in different minigames that might make a little bit more sense. And that is what I started working on. So my plan right now for this game is that this overworld is essentially an RPG, classic RPG kind of game. But then there are going to be instances where you go into dungeons in which it becomes essentially like a Vampire Survivors kind of game. So you can collect buffs in the overworld, and then you go into the dungeons, and it becomes a bit more of a bullet hell monster spawning thing. So this is the thing that I've just been working on in the past hour, actually. And, it's stuff like this which I think is quite exciting, because you start to see how a game might actually change and adapt and evolve. So the first thing in this is we can actually attack. Quite cool. And then slimes start spawning, and you can attack the slimes. You also lose lots of health, because you lose health per frame if it's near you. So you die very quickly, which is not what we want. But you can see where with a little bit of polish and a little bit of expansion, we can actually start to build out something that has a bit of mechanics to it and actually might be fun. Imagine that. A game actually being fun. So, what have I learned in the past 10 hours? The first thing, which is based off of earlier, is balance using tutorials with hands-on experience yourself. So in this episode, I implemented an inventory system, which was very quick, and I followed a tutorial, and it got me quick and efficient results. Whereas previously, I made the world's worst minigame, the fishing game, which took quite a lot of time, but it gave me hands-on experience with Godot. And I think there's a combination of those two things where you're learning something very efficiently from tutorials, but also getting into the trenches and actually kind of figuring things out yourself and working out patterns that work for you. So yeah, definitely recommend that. The next important thing is avoid the sunken cost fallacy. Just because you went down one route doesn't mean you need to stick with it. So in regards to the current inventory, right now I've done a little bit of work, and it works, a very basic thing. But what I found is if we go into the assets library, there are lots of different inventory systems available to you. So don't get stuck with one thing. Have a little look at what's around and use that. So my current thought process is my current inventory is relatively fit for purpose, but at some point I might can it and put in this. If you guys have any suggestions for inventory systems that you've used, let me know down in the comments, because that'd be much appreciated. So the next thing that I've learned, and I guess I've learned this before, but we'll learn this again, which is there are many ways to skin a cat. And what that means is there are many ways to do the same things. So currently I'm battling between many different patterns. So there's a kind of model and view pattern here where we split the model UI, and then we split the data and the state. And then there's a component-based system with composition, there's an inheritance-based system, and all of these work differently and interact with differently. And I think that's really one of the things that I'm kind of going through the process of learning, which is, do I make everything component and make more of a composition-based system? When do I start making things as a resource and serializing them so you can save and load and building it that way? And they all have different advantages and disadvantages and might work differently together, but I guess part of the experience is learning these things and knowing when to use them and when not to use them. So that concludes the 30-hour mark right now. I think we're at a relatively good place. We're starting to see some improvements on the map. We're starting to see a bit more of this dungeon gameplay, inventory stuff. And so I think over the next 10 hours, I'm going to work on probably expanding that a little bit, and then maybe adding some more interesting things into the overworld, just to kind of get an idea of how those two elements are going to really work together. But yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys again next time.